So trying to find these, like the deep root of what's going on. And along my journey, I found how it works and how to do it in a way that it is not a challenge every day. A lot of people say that to be sober is a fight every day, and I didn't accept that.
Yeah.
And so I found a way that I actually enjoy sobriety. And now that's why I'm here. Like, I want to share that with other people of like, it doesn't have to be the end of the world just because you can't keep partying, like we can move on and actually enjoy our life.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.
Hi guys, welcome back to Neff Inspiration, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stephan Neff. Another fantastic day to have a guest, and I've got Nicole Poulton with me. Nicole Poulton is a fellow traveler, a woman who has lived in the darkness for far too long and is now out there to share the key messages that there is hope, that there is help. She knows what she is talking about. She has been there, but now she knows that by addressing the root causes of addiction, we are in such a better place to deal with our maybe warped coping mechanisms. So I can't wait to talk to her. Nicole, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. It's been a long time coming for sure.
Oh, that's true. Oh, Nicole, thank you so much. Now, it is, we all try to escape pain. We all try to escape our reality. And that's typically why we fall prey to the alcohol. Are you happy to share a little bit about your story and about your, well, the darkness, really, where alcohol suddenly became such a tempting substance?
Yeah, I mean, it was a long time, a lot of that darkness. So I have a lot to say.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, so it all started for me back in my adolescence. When I was a kid, I was raised in a household that was pretty abusive and not very constructive. And so ultimately, when I was 15, I broke my back. And that gave me access over here in the States. You have unlimited access to pain pills. And that was really my vice at the beginning. And yeah, so my injury was, it stopped a lot of that abuse that I had, but it kickstarted my addiction. And then as time went on, I started drinking and I started, doing some other things that are definitely not ideal. And I thought I was numbing that physical pain of the injury, but I was actually numbing the emotional pain that came from all of that trauma. And ultimately it was a 6-year addiction. And I overdosed on my 21st birthday. I had mixed pills with alcohol, and it was one of the worst days of my life, but the best birthday present I could have ever asked for, because it was quite the wake up call to say the least. So that happened. And then that was in 2018. And ever since then, I have been on this journey of sobriety, trying to learn as much as I can about human psychology and behaviors and habits and how to do this in, like I say, do it the right way. So you only have to do it once. So trying to find these, like the deep root of what's going on. And along my journey, I found how it works and how to do it in a way that it is not a challenge every day. A lot of people say that to be sober is a fight every day, and I didn't accept that.
Yeah.
And so I found a way that I actually enjoy sobriety. And now that's why I'm here. Like, I want to share that with other people of like, it doesn't have to be the end of the world just because you can't keep partying, like we can move on and actually enjoy our life.
Sure. Wow. Wow. I'm so pleased for you. But there's one thing to get a rude awakening, in this case,
Yeah.
in probably a very white
Yeah.
surrounding with a lot of people in coats walking around. That will do the trick. For other people, maybe a DUI or their eighth DUI does finally do the
Mhm.
trick. So often enough, these addictions and our behaviors, they serve very much a need. And I very much understand that it was a beautiful relief Not only did you have the pharmaceutical effect of the painkiller, you had also the secondary gains of having a broken back, and the abuse to a certain degree stopped. Was that
Mhm.
also a time, going back to your fractured back, were your parents realizing what was happening? And did their behavior change because they were themselves on a growth stage, on a way of improving themselves, and realizing, oh my God, this could have ended very different? Or was it just as it was?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very glad that it all happened the way that it
Mm.
did, because if not, I wouldn't be who I am. But sometimes I wonder like what things could have been like if I had parents who were a little bit more attentive. At the time, my parents were already divorced and I was living with my dad. And he was actually my abuser. And so it was a very destructive household. And I didn't have that support. So there was nobody monitoring how many pills I was taking. There was no one really to put those guardrails up to guide me. It was just a free for all for a lot of the time.
And that's so hard because not only are you being brought up from a younger age with a certain set of traits of coping mechanisms. One of them, for example, is that you never trust other people. So therefore, there is automatically that insulation, that kind of keeping it all in and not
Mhm,
trusting anyone else. Was there an
mhm.
element of shame and guilt on your behalf?
Um, that didn't come until later. At the moment when I was first starting it and the first couple years of my addiction,
Mm.
it was it was such a destructive household that it was kind of this pre-frame of, well, we're all bad anyways, so why even try? So it was like, no matter what I could do, it can't get worse, I guess. So I had no morals, I had no values. I didn't understand how other people got those. I'm like, are you born with them? Do you learn them? Why don't I have them? And I didn't start asking those questions for a few years. Like I was already out of the house and I realized like, wait, other people, why do other people have a conscience and they don't want to break the law and they don't want to do drugs? I'm like, I'm so confused, and which is so backwards. But yeah, so at the beginning, there was no shame. It was just, I was in survival mode. For a lot of it, it was survive, just, it was barely even this day. It was, let me just get to the next hour.
Hmm.
Because with the abuse and the addiction, it was a lot of mental turmoil
Hmm.
and, depression and suicidal thoughts. And so it just got to the point where let me just numb for as long as I can and just try and make it through this. And I didn't think that I would last very long. I didn't think I would live past the age of 18. Like it was a crazy experience growing up in that environment because you couldn't dream. You couldn't think about what your future would become because what's the point, And so finally I got to this point where um I started realizing that other people had values. And my now husband, actually, when we first started dating, he realized what I was doing and he's like, Nicole, I'm not here to control you. I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I will not be with somebody who's doing these drugs. And that was the first time I'm like, wait, drugs aren't cool? That's weird. I've never heard that before. But that really sparked this question in me of why is it that I didn't have any any guidance? I don't have any internal moral compass and what's going on. And so then I started feeling some shame of like, okay, wait, there's something wrong with me. And then, obviously that's not true. It's just your conditioning and your mental, your belief system that you have ingrained in your current programming. And I just had to break that. But yeah, it was a weird experience for sure.
Oh, wow. 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 But what you're describing is so typical for adult children of alcoholics, or for adult children, or even the youngsters, any child growing up in a very dysfunctional household. Oh, and there are so many of us, shall I say, out there. The addiction affects at least 1 in 4 in the
Mhm.
world. So chemical addiction we are talking about. And even if there were no chemical addictions involved, dysfunctional households are so normal. And add to that the emotional and hormonal turmoil of a teenager, where you never fit in, regardless what a beautiful house, or even relationships. If everything is superb, you still don't feel right. But that is all extrapolated. It is all blown by magnitudes, out of normal proportions in someone who comes from a dysfunctional household. So it's all so common. But did you know it
Mhm.
was common? Did you?
No,
uh,
no, yeah. When I was a kid, I didn't know it was happening for a long time, like
mm,
it starts so young that you just think that that's normal. And it wasn't until I was about 12,
mm,
13, 14 that I started realizing like, oh wait, my friends' dads don't have this kind of relationship with them. And like I would crave to just after school go to somebody else's house, anybody, anywhere else if I could just be outside. It's like you realize that you don't like the energy at home. You don't like the the stuff that happens. And I think that that's just as you get older, you start to become more aware of what's going on. But for a good decade, I didn't realize that that abuse was happening. And then once I started recognizing it, it was hard to not see it. And then once you can't unsee something, then it really starts to weigh on you. But at that point, it's like you're in too deep and you can't speak up because that equals not being safe. And so, it's like, okay, just keep your head down, just
mm,
survive. And then, but you don't want to feel so terrible. Like the pain is just so intense when it comes to the emotional pain.
mm,
And so then it's like, okay, well, how do I just not feel anything? And then with the addiction, I mean, realizing that I always say that an addiction is just a solution to a deeper problem. And those of us who have childhoods where there's abusive parents, it's so common that that's that next step. It's like, well, if something like that happens in our childhood, in our adolescence, having that trauma, you don't know how to process it. You don't want to feel it. So how do we numb it? And that's where addiction comes in.
mm. Well said. Well said. And you have already alluded to the root causes and our hunt for them. It's one thing to recognize that something has a causal relationship, that something causes you to behave in a certain way, but it's a huge step to then actually change. Now, here you were for 6.5 years using pain medications, using alcohol and other behaviors. How the hell did you stop? First of all, was there medical help there to help you get through the sometimes very challenging period of transformation, i.e., the withdrawals?
I wish I was at a time in my life. I didn't know that there were resources out there.
Uh,
Like I had my overdose on my 21st birthday. And at that point, I was so oblivious to the resources that are out there. I didn't know about, detox centers. I didn't know about sober living homes. I didn't know that you could go to a doctor and like wean off of a medication. I was so oblivious. And so ultimately, my overdose created enough leverage in me. People change for only one of two reasons. They're either moving away from pain or towards pleasure. And most often, we will do more to avoid pain than we will to go towards pleasure.
mm,
So an easy example of this that everybody can relate to, you look at it from a monetary perspective. It's like, okay, well, what does it take to make $1 million? How many people are going to do that versus how do I avoid hitting zero? You know, it's like, we will not want to hit zero and not be able to buy food and rent, but we don't do as much to meet that massive amount of financial threshold. So same thing with our behaviors. We will do more to avoid pain than we will to go towards pleasure. But when I had my overdose, it was so much pain. It was me finally hitting rock bottom, realizing that if I don't make a change, I'm not going to make it. You know, I'm not going to survive this. And I was fortunate enough that, fortunate or unfortunate, I don't know how you look at it, there was no medical intervention with my overdose. I just kind of struggled through it. And then after that, it was just so ingrained in me of, I have to do something different. And while I was overdosing, I actually had like this epiphany, and call it God or the universe, source, whatever you want to believe. I had like this vision, this out of body experience where I see myself from a bird's eye view and I'm overdosing. And this voice says to me, this is not your life. You can choose something else. And at that point, I realized I don't have to just react to these problems that I have. Like I used to have to just react to the abuse or react to the drug use or whatever, the pain. I used to have to just manage whatever problems were thrown my way. And this was the first time I realized I could anticipate, I could create my future and design my life into whatever I want it to be, as long as I'm proactive about it. And so with that, it created enough leverage with the pain and the pleasure, realizing it doesn't have to be so bad, but if I don't change, it will be, you know, the end for me. So I think that when it comes to creating that change and getting sober, for me, it was that leverage, that rock bottom hit for me. But those of you listening, like, don't wait for rock bottom. That is not what I'm saying. You can definitely get help before you reach that point.
Oh, please. But then again, let's be real. For those people who are drinking far too much in a dangerous fashion, let's call them alcoholic just for this, to give it a label, however we like it or don't like it. 95% of alcoholics will deny that there's anything wrong with them. Denial is one of the strongest features of any addiction. So therefore, it is, it's so true. The teacher appears when the student is ready. And so many times you can drag someone to an AA meeting if they are not willing and if they're not ready to engage and to open up, or to actually even accept that they have a problem. Yeah,
It's not going to work.
Exactly. So, oh God. So I'm so pleased that it had happened to you. And I'm actually really pleased that it happened at a very early stage, because for me, it took probably 2 more decades before it became clear that there was a hell of a lot of pain in my life that I had never dealt with. And therefore, those wrong coping mechanisms were certainly stronger ingrained in there. But the moment I say that, it's the first time that you feel that relief, the pain going, that is when the memory is laid down, the artificial but so potent link between, oh, this is a painkiller, or, well, this is a painkiller. We can call it like that. If that may be sugar, if that may be cocaine, if that may be alcohol, gambling, sex, whatever it is. Oh, this is the painkiller. And there's the pain. Oh, I like it. So that is that's one time, and that is so deeply ingrained. So just explaining to all of you out there, whatever you have gone through, it's actually quite normal. It's actually a very realistic adaptation of your body to the pain that you perceived. It was just not that there was a bone broken and was poking out of the skin, that everyone can say, oh, okay, he's in pain. Yeah, okay. But your pain is just far more hidden. But certainly, the same magnitude or even worse.
Mhm.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you went through the withdrawals the hard way. Um,
Mhm.
but how did you start developing thereafter? In my first year after rehab, I was pretty much an empty canvas. I didn't know who I was. When did you start to realize your why, your mission in life, your purpose
Yeah.
in life?
It was a process for me because once I stopped using and I got sober, it was all of the withdrawals and just terrible. And then I realized, okay, I was using all of this stuff so I didn't have to process the pain. So what do you do naturally? You have to start processing, you have to start feeling. And that's like the hardest part of sobriety is that initial, like, okay, how do I actually feel again? Because it's so common. I mean, even you look at like, it's a stressful day at work and you come home and you crack open a beer or a bottle of wine. It's like so mundane. Or you turn on the TV and you just veg out for hours. Like, we're so accustomed to not having to deal with our emotions. So when I got sober, it was about a year of learning how to deal with my emotions and just letting myself feel whatever came without any judgment. So if I'm angry, I'm angry, and something that really helped me was journaling. So I would be able to write everything I was feeling. And
Yeah.
it's funny because I have these massive thick journals and I write at least every other day,
Yeah.
but probably 5 days a week. I'm writing all the time. And back at the beginning, like you can see chronologically through the years where I was at mentally,
Wow.
because that first year, it was so full of rage and anger and pain and hurt.
Oh,
And now it's like all gratitude and, so it's so different. But that whole first year, it took a lot to just let myself be mad and be upset. And if I wanted to use or drink, I was allowed to feel that. I wasn't allowed to do it, but I was allowed to feel it and write about it and why I deserved it and all of the things, everything I could think of, because what I felt was valid and I needed to let myself feel that. And it
yeah.
wasn't until when I hit that 1 year sober, I realized that I could actually do this. Like, no, that first year wasn't easy, but I had this hallucination that year two is probably easier than year one.
Mm.
It's like it probably gets easier as time goes on. And ultimately, around year three, I realized, okay, this isn't hard anymore. Like, I have something here. People in my life, like people I knew, were coming up to me and saying, hey, like, you're doing this, you're sober, and I have this problem. Can you help me? And so I started helping other people, and I realized, like, okay, I need to be talking about this
Right.
because addiction does not discriminate. It is in everyone's life. No matter who you are, someone in your network who is struggling with some form of addiction. And so considering that and realizing, hey, I've got a couple years under my belt. I know what I'm doing, at least more than somebody who's never tried to get sober, right? It's like I'm ahead of someone. So let me turn around and teach those people and help them on their journey, because it wasn't easy. And so I think that's when I realized that, this is something I needed to be doing. Is I was speaking up and just people were reacting to it. And I realized that if I can condense time for someone else,
Yeah.
that would lessen the amount of pain somebody else has to go through. And it feels like that's what it's all about.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, it's hard. I mean, here you are living uh, in a or on a trajectory towards to becoming a better human being, and this journey will never stop until we both are dead, and that's a privilege. So we have got the privilege of growing, the privilege of choice every single day. I will talk about your choices very soon. But is it not challenging for you now to see others that are going through hard times, that are using drugs, being reminded of the benefits, so to speak, of those drugs? Some people rather prefer to do the work and then turn away and not deal with people. You are running to the sound of gunshots, so to speak. Uh, are there not moments that therefore you yearn to be back in that feeling of immediate satisfaction from the drug or from the alcohol?
It's funny you ask because I feel like no matter who you are, and I could be wrong with this, but no matter who you are or how much time you have in your sobriety, there's always those triggers, right? Where like a memory pops up and brings you back, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, remember when? So I have those for sure. Like for me, it's a couple specific songs. I'm super into um like Latin music, and back in my party days, when I would listen to these songs, I would, do cocaine, and it was the best time, whatever. And so now if I listen to those songs, it's like, oh, remember when I used to do that? But like crazy. But when I'm helping somebody and I see what they're going through, I don't I don't feel that craving of, yeah, I wish I could just do that too. Because I think I'm able to look at it from more of that outsider perspective of,
Beautiful.
for them, they're in that tornado. They're going through it. They're struggling. You see all of the
Yeah.
things that come with it. And so from that outside perspective, it's like, okay, but if you just stop doing this, your tornado would chill. It
Yeah.
would just slow down and you'd be able to
Yeah.
get your feet on the ground again. And so being able to see the direct cause and effect of, if you just got your drinking under control, or if you stopped using this medication, or if you,
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, you can realize like, okay, well, this is a direct correlation to why your relationships are bad, why your health is bad, why your job is going downhill. It's like, I can see those things. So it's like, oh my gosh, just stop. But obviously that's easier said than done.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, it doesn't pull me back as much
Good.
as those triggers, my own triggers, where it's like, if I'm driving by myself at night, it's like, oh, I used to like take a drag, with the windows down, and like, oh yeah, remember when I used to do that? Like, I don't do that anymore, but you just think about your own
Yep.
experiences.
Yep.
But yeah.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You're so authentic. You're so honest. Thank you for that. Because that's the other thing that we do. We lie and we hide. And for us to be here and talk openly about our feelings and about those things that others are incredibly ashamed about, it's such a
Mhm.
refreshing and important part of recovery, of living
Yeah.
your life to the fullest. And I would actually nowadays expand this principle into the principle of extreme ownership. It's a leadership skill that essentially uh, many people, yeah, maybe talk about, but not really walk the walk. And I think you are wonderful because you're actually literally going out there and saying, "Here I am, warts and all," and that is beautiful. That is what we need. We need honesty and authenticity in the world rather than the bullshit that nowadays is called media, or
Yeah.
the slogans from politicians that as soon as they're voted in will completely change their behavior depending upon the kind of money that they have received from
Mhm.
various sources. There's so much that is not nice out there. Uh, how do you deal with negativity? How do you deal with those kind of things that are outside of your control, essentially?
Yeah. So actually, this is something that has helped me in every area of my life. And it started with sobriety. But when I first heard it, it's a little chant, little saying. But when I first heard it, it blew my mind. And it's so simple. And so I'm going to share it with you. But I just want those of you listening, like, really really feel what this means, because it can go right over your head, but this has helped me so much. It's this saying that goes, I am not the body, I am not the emotions, I am not the thoughts, I am the soul. I am a being of pure energy and light. I am that I am. And for me, I don't know about you, but for me, I've resonated on this saying for so long that no matter what the problem is, no matter what the external conditions are, it's just a reminder that I am here having a human experience and things happen. And who am I to say that it should be all, rainbows and butterflies for me, where I have no problems whatsoever? It's like, no, I get to have problems. What a luxury in life, because to have problems means I'm alive. And, that used to not be an option, like with me overdosing and the abuse and everything, and me even potentially ending it. It's like, no, I get to have problems. What a beautiful thing. And just remembering that, no, I don't get to have control over everything, but what can I control? I can control how I show up in this situation.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And you're right. We actually have control over situations far more than we accept or that we are willing to see. And that is, again, a skill, a very perishable skill, may I say. You have to practice that. And that practice is really gratitude. That practice is essentially journaling, of putting your emotions onto paper, or at least spelling things out loud, and therefore focusing your attention onto something different. It is often quite intriguing how much society wants us to think about the problems that we have, because that equals then sales in advertisement, may that be for whatever perfumes or health things. I don't want to go into details to prevent a lawsuit here.
Yeah,
but
I could go way deep into that.
my point. So there is so many ways that we are led to believe that only with the help of outside, of others, of material things, will we finally be anywhere close to happy, which is bullshit. Ultimately, I think many of us who are on a recovery pathway, or who are on a personal development trajectory, we learn the internal validation. We learn to draw strength from things that come from within us. And I think that is such a gift once we practice that skill and
Yeah.
work on that. It suddenly is far more difficult for outside scary headlines to really impregnate. Because first of all, nowadays I ask myself, well, is that really true, what is being said, or is that just clickbait? And secondly, why am I being told that? And once you ask these two questions, many, many things out there, you actually look at very, very different light. So,
Yeah.
so I love it. I love it. We both have got the same insights as far as manipulation and yeah, manipulation of the masses, should I say, is actually happening out there.
Yes. Oh, yes. And the media is definitely, I mean, yeah, I could go so deep into it. Yeah.
I think we need to do another interview and actually just
I
talk
know,
about
right?
that
We'll
and
just talk
really
about
get
that.
going. Okay. Stay tuned for volume
Yes.
2. Oh, brilliant. No. Okay, so I mean, we talked about gratitude, we talked about journaling. These are all already the key mechanisms with which we try to keep ourselves sane and provide a degree of serenity and balance within our lives. What other low-hanging fruit do you recommend to people who want to change?
Yeah, I mean, it's so cliche to say, but for me specifically, like nutrition and exercise, like if you focus on how are you actually treating your body,
Oh, yeah.
on a very basic level, you don't have to get so into it, but recognizing, if I feel bad, well,
Mm.
like if you look at everything as a formula and feeling bad is the outcome, like what are you putting in? Because if you're putting in bad sleep, bad food, not moving, it's like, well, yeah, that's a recipe for feeling bad. So I think that looking at our life as a whole, sometimes we like to compartmentalize, like life is over here, family's over here, work is over here. And sobriety is just one of those buckets. But I think really it's one big pot, just everything goes in. And so we have to think about what is the outcome we want? And then what are we putting in? And do those two things make sense? Because a lot of times, if you're not getting the outcome you want, it's because you're putting in things that, I mean, it doesn't compute. So I think looking at your diet and exercise as just very high level, just does it make sense? I think that for me has been something that has helped, and just self-care in general of, are you having compassion for yourself and understanding that, yeah, problems can be challenging and you don't have to be, perfect at solving them 100% of the time. Having that understanding and compassion for yourself of, yeah, you're going to make mistakes, but are we going to linger on them and just beat ourselves up about it? Or are we going to
Exactly.
be able to move on and learn?
It's beautiful. That's exactly the way forward. Oh, wow. Hydration, nutrition, exercise, absolutely. But sleep. I mean, when we
Mhm.
are in the midst of our addictions, our sleep is horrible. Our sleep is further horrible because we are actually the reasons for it, the PTSD, the trauma, you don't rest. Um,
Mhm.
what do you nowadays do to get your sleep sorted? Do you sleep well nowadays?
Yeah, I sleep amazing now. It like night and day. Back when I was really in my addiction, I thought I had insomnia. I thought it was going to be forever. I was only sleeping 3 hours a night, and that was bad quality sleep. And now I think a routine has really helped me of getting my circadian rhythm in check.
Yeah,
So every night between, I mean, I'm not like a robot. I have a decent window of, an hour or two every night where I try and go to bed between 10 and 11, and I wake up, between anytime between 6:30 and 8 if I'm sleeping in. So everybody is different. I'm not
yeah,
saying that that's the routine that you need to adopt, but I think having some consistency and training yourself that, we're going to bed now, we need to, start quieting our nervous system, because when we can't sleep well, more often than not, it's because there's some dysfunction in our nervous system. We're awake, we feel, either that fight or flight, or we have been too stimulated too close to when we're going to bed. So just being aware of what am I doing, for the last 2 hours of my day.
yeah.
Was I looking at a screen? Did I go exercise? Was I just really upset? Like, is the cortisol in my blood too high? Like,
Oh, yeah.
what is going on? Are you breathing deeply? Like, so many people
Yeah.
would fix so many problems if they would just breathe.
You're talking to a breath coach. You're so
Yeah.
right. You're so right. And I think the power of breath is astounding because it really has the power of either lifting us extremely up, giving us the sympathetic drive, or far more important in nowadays life, in my opinion, is to actually calm things down, to bring out the parasympathetic nervous system, to bring out the opposite of fight and flight, to bring out the rest
Mhm.
and restoration. That is so beautiful. And it's easily within our reach. It's easily there. It's not
Mhm.
difficult to do, but you need to learn how to. And I think that is the beautiful growth journey that is waiting for anyone out there who is sort of fresh to the topic of sobriety, or is fresh coming out of some very stressful times. Maybe you have not dived deep into addiction, but the stress in your life, the trauma was still there, and you are still having to deal with a lot of shit in your life. The same mechanisms that we have been talking about are so beneficial for you to turn your life around, to get a complete new perspective on the things that you are facing, which doesn't make them go away, but it maybe allows your subconscious to come up with solutions to those problems that you had never even thought about because you were so busy keeping yourself busy. You were so busy
Yeah.
with hiding. And
Yes.
so with you actually taking time and calming those maelstrom of chaos, calm that down. That is pure gold. And it's only a reach away. You can learn those
Mhm.
skills. So now, wow, Nicole, you are a fountain of passion. You're a fountain of knowledge. Oh, it's amazing to have you on my show. If people want to know more about you, where can they go?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many places you guys can go now with the internet. I have a website, it's just NicolePoulton.com that's got a lot of goodies. Or just, I mean, Instagram is easy too. If you want to just shoot me a message and if you've got a problem, you want some advice or you want to, schedule a call, whatever. That's just Nicole Poulton on Instagram.
Have a look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast. All of Nicole's links are down there. Nicole, you're an amazing woman. Thank you so much for making this world a better place. One impact, one interview, one action at a time. We need more people like you. I'm very, very grateful for the work that you're doing.
That's so sweet. Thank you for having me. Honestly, I think that it's really inspiring just being able to talk to other people who have similar paths like us. Like I love it. This job, I am spoiled.
And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with intention. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.